Jody from Chicago. Any theories as to why Trump's foundation has gotten darker lately? Is it for Halloween?
Oh, I didn't know what you mean by foundation there. And
yeah,
I have noticed personally that the application of his spray on tan has gotten worse. Like he has a lot more like poor application around the eyes. It was like a reverse raccoon to me.
There's a vignette that's much more apparent now too around the edges, and I thought I just thought I sort of forgot because he's been out of the public eye for a while, but. Yeah, I've noticed that too. Like the whole Cheeto dust thing is really back.
Can we pull this up? I took a screenshot just yesterday. I'm like having dinner and I just saw this photo of Trump. This went viral and I didn't edit this photo at all. Not viral, but a lot of likes for me.
It's just like one of those blackface dolls you see in the Netherlands all the time. Right. I think
Al
it's just
Jolson.
a contrast. I think it looks like, I think it must just be because he has the high vis vest on. The contrast makes it look a lot darker. Like I think it's just movie magic.
But put it back up. He's okay. So like I'm conscious of this because I've been getting over a cold, and when you have makeup and your nose is running, or you have to keep dabbing it goes away, and that's what's happening with him. Right. I don't know if he has a cold or if he's just doing the Adderall sniffies, but like
it's not just under his nose. It's also like the edges. It's like also in like, his kitchen is all out of order. As the kids say.
And I love Boris Epstein and Corey Lewandowski back there taking photos like proud parents.
I just realized that was those two guys. Yeah.
And I guess this is a great way to transition to this photo op because he did the garbage truck photo op. This is him in Wisconsin yesterday. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I just think it's great that no matter who wins, we're gonna have another black president.
What?
Al Jolson could have ran.
I'm gonna need you to elaborate on this. I mean, for me, this looks like a drunk president, but I know he's a teetotaler. Have you seen this video of him trying to get to the garbage truck? He almost falls over. Lots of people saying this is me getting into an Uber after 9 beers. Take with this what you will. And a reminder, he's wearing a garbage vest.
A high visibility vest.
To hit Biden because Biden said that his supporters were garbage. But dude, your guy said the garbage thing first.
They introduced the garbage thing, and also it's true about people's supporters.
And it's like, oh, okay, now they're going to cry about inflammatory rhetoric about the other side. Please, even though Biden's an idiot for doing it, but still.
I don't think.
Hold on.
150 million people are not garbage. I can tell you who the real garbage
low ball estimate.
Won't say that.
Yeah, that's.
Give me this damn truck.
All right, here it goes. I gotta get home from the bar. Whoa, buddy.
About 3 grasps of the handle missed there, and then, okay.
Here goes. Help. I mean.
Bro, he's gonna die in office if he wins.
I agree. I mean.
Just like McKinley, his favorite.
J.D. Vance, President J.D. But not in that manner. We're not inciting. I guess we'll do the other garbage truck thing and then we can expand upon this. So he was, after that, asked questions by the press, and here he is specifically being asked about the Puerto Rico part because that's how this whole garbage thing got started. A speaker at your rally said Puerto Rico was a floating island of garbage.
All the people in Puerto Rico I love Puerto Rico, and Puerto Rico loves me. I don't know anything about a comedian. I love Nobody's done more for Puerto Rico than me.
Pause it just real quick. I don't know anything about a comedian. Why didn't he get on a bus? And because that's where he threw Hinchfield or whatever his name.
Hinchcliffe.
Whatever,
yeah. I mean,
cartoon cat ass name, like
so ridiculous.
It makes me think of that Nick Cage movie, the recent vampire Renfield. Like I don't know.
Oh yeah.
It was terrible. Oh my gosh.
But it makes him sound more formidable than he is. He is just like a stupid Rogan Universe podcast bro. But when he says nobody's done more for Puerto Rico than me, dude. We know that you withheld Hurricane Maria money. We know that you went down there and like did jump shots of paper towels into the crowd. This is pathetic.
He just says that on everything though.
Nobody's done more for Puerto Rico than me. I took care of them when they had the big hurricanes, and nobody gets along better with Puerto Rico and the Puerto Rican people than me. They love me and I love them. Go ahead.
Okay. So there you
Just say
go.
Boricua. I want to hear him say Boricua. Like,
Case closed.
Boricua? Boricua?
I mean, they're right to ask him about the Puerto Rico comments in that context, because the whole dude, you're trying to make a. First of all, he's so desperate to be running against Biden again. This is a part of it too. This wish fulfillment, where he wishes so badly that he could run against Biden and his comments about garbage. He's like, they think that this is going to be another deplorable situation. Hey, buddy, you guys said the garbage thing first, and it's not just about another side. It's about a specific group of voters that is really crucial in the most important swing state in this race, Pennsylvania, but also in other swing states. That's the problem here.
And I think it hits different after 8 years when Trump actually got to be president. And also, it's not Hillary saying it, frankly. And Hillary codes, I think, as more elitist than Biden does.
Yeah, and also, Biden's not on the ticket.
Shout out to all my New Yorkers, folks.
Walls here, I think. This is the Walls that I think we should have been seeing the entire time. And I appreciate this.
Now look, this dude's nearly 80 years old. He damn near killed himself getting into a garbage truck. You would think over 80 years you would understand how a tariff works. Smarter people than Donald Trump, which is a good chunk of folks, CEOs of companies like Black & Decker, AutoZone, and Columbia have gone on the record to say if Donald Trump goes forward with this plan, they will simply have to raise prices and pass it on to you. Donald Trump saying China will pay for those tariffs the same way Mexico paid for the wall. It's not going to happen.
I've been dying for them to bring that up a little more, because that's such an iconic failed promise, right? Like the way that he came onto the scene saying he's going to build a wall and Mexico's going to pay for it, and that did not happen.
My kingdom for a Democrat that can say AutoZone and it not sound false.
Yeah, I mean, he was in Minnesota famous for doing some of those like car repair tutorials.
It's retail politics. For
If
you.
anyone knows this stuff, it's Tim Walz here. All right, let's read some IMs. Noel from San Francisco. I want to hear him say Puerto Rico again. Remember that video?
You know that guy? Do we have that guy who endorsed Trump and is taking it back now? Who Trump thought was a female because he heard Latino.
Oh, that's the guy.
We might need to watch the original on that, but he pulled it back. But it's kind of maybe we'll do some IMs and get to it.
We'll tee that up.
Nicki Jam, she's so hot.
Yes, it was that guy. Yes, he thought it was a woman.
A Latino superstar. Okay, I like the sound of that.
I mean, it's clear they just didn't know that Puerto Rico is part of America. They just didn't know that Puerto Rico is part of America because obviously they think of all Latinos. They flatten all Latinos down to be Mexican and illegal immigrants and therefore unable to vote legally. But I'm sure that joke kills in like a nightclub in Boston. Like that was probably a great like Boston open mic night, open mic joke. But like New York City is full of Puerto Ricans.
Right. I guess, okay, so let's do this then. So this was a month ago.
Yeah, like mid-September.
Mid-September.
In Vegas.
Donald Trump, as we just mentioned, Puerto Rican voters, people of Puerto Rican descent are a major voting bloc in Pennsylvania in particular, but the other swing states as well. So at the time, Donald Trump's riding high, thinks he's got the Nicki Jam endorsement in the bag. Here he is talking about that endorsement that he cherishes so much.
Latin music superstar Nicki Jam. Do you know Nicki? She's hot. Where's Nicki? Thank you, Nicki. Great to be having you here. Now you have to get. Oh look!
Oh look! She's really hot.
I'm glad he came up. Latin music superstar.
Okay.
I mean, he
So
can
hot.
pivot on a dime. He can pivot on a dime. I think he might have been thinking of Nina Sky, which is, I always forget, is two people as opposed to not being one. So I may as
Is that
well.
the I'm still in love with you? I'm still in love with you. Is that Nina Sky? No, maybe I'm wrong.
No.
I think, Brandon, you're giving him way too much credit. He just
He saw the word Latin
he saw
and it reminded
Nicki.
him of his internet habits.
Yes, he saw Latino. He saw a name that,
Latin,
to be
okay.
fair, Nicki is usually a woman, although it's Nicki I usually who's a woman and not Nicki
Well, little
Y.
Nicki.
But
Little Nicki was-
Yeah, I don't know there's a lot of female with a Y, but
I'm giving him as much credit as possible. Not credit, but trying to go through how his brain went, where he goes immediately, and this is how you know he's a racist. He doesn't even think anything except to like sexualize a Latina woman right from the rip.
I've seen that tab.
And so that's what's fun here is that actually hot ass, sexy Nicki Jam, spicy lady, ended up after those comments at the rally taking that endorsement back. So this is the present day around 5 to 6 weeks later.
Mi gente, normalmente yo no soy una persona de contestar este tipo de cosas en las
Oh,
cámaras.
okay. It's
I
in
guess I
Spanish.
forgot this was the Spanish.
Pues en mis redes
Does he say it in English?
sociales. No negocian.
Well,
Okay,
it's
I gotta
probably
know
even
this
more
before.
harmful. Yeah, sorry about that. But yeah, Nicki, who follows Puerto Rican, tells his 43 million followers on Instagram that he supported Trump because he thought he would be good for the economy, but he can't look past the disrespect that's been shown to Puerto Rico. And that's, I think, kind of fascinating because you see nationalism and class be pulled in two different directions, right?
Yeah.
Because if he is as successful as Trump is, as hot in recording industry as Trump says is, probably would benefit from the economy of, like, say, tax cuts and stuff like that. But at a certain point, like, it's interesting because there's a woman who in that Philadelphia, I think, news story where she's like, I was going to vote for Trump. I
Right.
just can't.
Yes.
And like that seems to be like a very strong trend line on both sides of this election. But like people realizing like, well,
Well, the
I have
cost
to
of
come down
groceries
one
is
way.
a real thing, and they were interviewing. I think it was another news story I saw, maybe on CNN. A Puerto Rican man who said, I was voting for Harris anyway, but a lot of the people that I work with, their number one thing is that the price of groceries is too high, and they felt like Trump would be better. This is why that rally was such an unforced error in that way. It might have been a little tighter with some of these groups if you were able to still convince them that you were good for the economy, which Republicans default win. And also I would say like him being a man or him being a businessman is a part of that
And they win
mythology too.
They win that economy thing, I think, because the electorate is more geared towards middle class and bourgeois interests than more poor people, right? So like
Yeah.
we're asking voters about the economy, not just the American people at large.
Right. Okay. Let's
Latin superstar.
Nicki. Let's take a call here. Calling from a 415 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, it's JR from Philly.
JR from Philly. What's on your mind?
We wanted to ask you about the polling thing. I've been just a little frustrated, not with your commentary, but even reading like Endorsement newsletter, who, it's obviously it's done amazing work. This, I just feel like there's like a mechanism for why the polls are being tightened, and I just haven't really seen anyone talk about it specifically, and I was wondering if you agreed. So, there's all these bad polls out there the Republicans keep throwing out, and then even when you remove those bad polls, it doesn't move the race very much. Isn't it because the effect of all those bad polls and all this poly-market BS that is being thrown out there trying to make the race look closer is causing the other pollsters to more conservatively, because ultimately more conservatively weight their polls, right? Because they get data back, but that's not the end of the process. Then they have to take that and then figure out how representative is this sample of the electorate, and they have to make all these judgment calls. And that's where all the bias, I think, is really coming in and causing this poll tightening. But I've been trying to find any pollster to talk about it at that level.
Well,
And
they're not
sort of
going to do it right
frustrating.
now, JR. And look, this is the thing is I could be wrong about this. I could be wrong, and it would be devastating if I was
Sure.
wrong for the country.
Yeah, so same here.
For my brain and all of that. But you know, I just have to go with what my gut says and what my analysis of the race is. And you know, even Nate Silver now is talking about this herding dynamic. He likes to hedge. But he said yesterday, there are too many polls in the swing states that show the race exactly Harris +1, tie, or Trump +1. Should be more variance than that. Everyone is herding, or everyone but New York Times Siena. I would add to Silver that Ipsos is still reliable in that regard. There are still polls. They're really doing actual polling, and these pollsters are doing that too. But the dynamic that I want people to keep in mind is that in the way that our media organizations are really susceptible to Republicans screaming at them and saying, you're biased against us, you have a liberal bias, etc. These polling firms are hearing the same stuff from Republican groups. So these junk polls don't change the methodology of these of these pollsters, but they do say like, okay, well, if our poll isn't showing that, we still have to weight those. And there still isn't, including in Silver's model, not a recognition of these junk pollsters as partisan and for what they are. So they're still included in the aggregate. And the herding dynamic that he's talking about there is like, as you say, they get their results, but they also weigh them with trends and other things like the fact that they feel that there is some of these pollsters feel that there is always a hidden Trump support vote. They felt that because they were humiliated in 2016 because they underestimated that hidden Trump support vote. But then in 2020, they did also overestimate Biden, right? And there were two options and forks in the road that they could have gone down in terms of assessing this thing. They could have said, oh, this might have been the result of COVID, that Democrats were more likely to respond to pollsters, one, because they're more likely to respond to pollsters because they don't hate them, and two, because they were inside more and more responsive. And that is a theory that I think really needs to be tested, but the pollsters didn't take that this election cycle. They're still baking in that hidden Trump support. And that has been my contention this entire time. I don't have evidence for it. I don't have access to their methodology, but we can see it. And based on how they did the same thing in 2022, we can make a judgment call about that. They were wrong in 2022 about this. Additionally, last point I'll make here, JR, is that additionally, this is the first post-January 6th race for Donald Trump. Independents overwhelmingly think he lost the 2020 race. It is a problem for them. It's also the first presidential race after Roe, and we saw how the midterms reacted with Roe, and we're seeing high female early voter turnout. All of these indicators, to me, paint this picture, and that's why I've been so critical and vocal about this.
I agree, and I've been sort of in snippets hearing your criticism, and it's been mirroring my own sort of criticism as well, but I haven't seen even someone as thorough and critical as Endorsement and his stuff. I think there's that missing thing, which is the actual what is getting into what causes a pollster to go from their actual polling, where they're calling people or they have an internet poll or whatever, to their sort of final product.
I think that's why Josh.
That's where it is.
Yeah.
Endorsement and
Josh
had a great
is
piece about 2022, which I think displayed a lot of this, but there's still like that little conversation.
But he editorializes and gives his commentary. Like the major writers about polls, like Nate Cohn, they're not going to go out on a limb like this until they get the results.
No.
So we're just speculating at this point. But
I agree. Anyway,
appreciate the call, JR.
Have a good one.
Thanks. Bye. You too. Brandon, did you want to jump in?
No, I agree with everything you said. I think, the thing I've been thinking about this entire time is that not just with polls, but with the Republican-Democrat dynamic, there is a tendency towards normalizing the Republicans. And what that looks like is also treating them as though they have a 50-50 chance of winning every election. And so, and my perception is that it'll either be really close or Kamala will blow Trump out of the water in a way that is not being reflected in the polls. But I don't necessarily see a Trump blowout as being possible. And if that's the case, then it means that the polls are likely skewing towards Republicans. But, I'm a professional researcher. I really don't trust polls. I don't really trust the things I see unless I can see the raw data, because I don't know. There are a lot of ways in which polls can be skewed. They can be skewed based on how you do the polling. Like, are you using a probability panel, or are you using just like your everyday random like general population panel? Are you using phone calls? Are you using internet calls? Are you getting an actual representative sample of every demographic, or are you weighting it one way versus another way? Yep. So like, unless you're going to show me the actual like Excel spreadsheet with every answer, then I don't really necessarily believe what I see when I see polls, because I've seen on the back end just also how oftentimes you'll have a poll of like 1,200 people, and like 100 plus of those will be just bad responses, and they'll just leave them in because it's not necessarily like technically viewed as skewing the data if a 10% of your sample is not great. So, I would just be wary of believing everything you see, even if it's expressed in like a graph form, without knowing like the mechanics of how everything's being done, which I mean, you can find out. But personally, I think the overarching point is true, which is that people skew towards over believing Republicans are viable because that's the way our system has to work. And otherwise, you can't have fun going up into what's the point of all these pollsters going up until the election? And
you take it within the context of other data and you aggregate that data. And then, for me, it's not just my read of the polls on their face. It's also these other things where like voter enthusiasm is the highest it's been in 2008 in the presidential race. The early voting numbers favor women over men, and the fundamentals of the abortion conversation and all of that. Those are the kinds of factors that I put into the analysis of this that isn't going to be reflected in straight up data, right? So
and also people lie in polls all the time. Like when people lie on surveys, people will tell you one thing because that's what's just that social desirability bias. You have to find ways of getting around that isn't just directly asking questions, so unless you have to be really sophisticated in how you do things like that. And I don't think that a lot of times they're being sophisticated. I think they're just doing rapid response polling to like, okay, we want to see how people are responding post debate. So that needs to be done in like 8 hours. And so that means you can only be so picky with how you do things. So, that's not to try to invalidate all types of like polling or research. It's just to say, it's like finding a good movie critic. You have to find one critic that you really vibe with, but in this case, you really find their data to be consistently correct and not worry about all of the other polls and variances being done, because that is just, there will always be people doing bad polls, and there are a lot of different ways to do a bad poll.
Yeah, 100%. Nicola writes in, Dave Weigel and Endorsement went into this a little more on the recent episode of Chapo Trap House this week. So if you want to hear them get into this aspect of the polling, that might be worth checking out. I will check that out, although everyone should subscribe to Endorsement Substack if they want more of this kind of content. If, like me, you're a bit of a nerd about elections sometimes, that is a good subscription. Carl Barks, just in case y'all see this, and not the first, I submitted, but I just want to bring awareness to California's Prop 34. It's an attempt to inhibit rent control disguised as drug cost control. Okay, California Prop 34, an attempt to inhibit rent control disguised as drug cost control. So everybody, that is good to know. Vote against that proposition. All right, let's take another call here. Calling from a 361 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
This is Alfred from Texas.
Alfred from Texas. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to know if you guys still supported funding the war in Ukraine.
I support funding the Ukrainian defense as a way to also be involved in peace negotiations. But I do think that the Biden administration policy has been a bit aimless in that regard.
Why do you consider it a war of defense?
Oh, God.
I mean, they're killing people.
You can't kill anybody in defense?
Well, I guess you can.
How do you defend yourself in a war? You kill people, or you just
there are ways of defending yourself. Sorry.
But what does self-defense entail in war?
it doesn't necessarily entail killing other human beings, but
well, that's
okay,
extremely Pollyannish, I would say. I mean, what would self-defense constitute in regards to Russia invading Ukraine? That Ukraine can't kill anybody and that can't kill any Russian soldiers, and that doesn't constitute self-defense?
They're not just killing Russians that are going into their territory. They've moved into Russia. I'm sure you know that.
No, I know that. Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, just as it's going, Zelensky is having press gangs push people into service. Russians, they're finding 13-year-old boys, 70-year-old men in uniform, and this is a nuclear power 4 times larger than Ukraine, and I think it's immoral to encourage and help a people fight a war that they can't win.
Okay. So what is your suggestion?
Sorry?
Go ahead, Brandon.
No, I just said it's kind of a different point than the first point, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Yes. So my suggestion would be to encourage them to work towards peace negotiations.
Yep, agreed.
Stop the bloodshed.
But if we can't, I agree on that front. But you just said that you felt like Russia was not offensive, so.
I didn't say that.
Okay. What is your characterization?
Well, just let me jump in real quick. I would say, working towards peace doesn't preclude self-defense, nor does it preclude going to, on the offensive against Russia. One could argue that it would make you an easier to sue for peace if you are negotiating from a place of strength.
All right. Appreciate the call. Thank you.
Good call. Good call.
Philly, the majority report has allowed this slaughter to go on too long. Yeah.
I don't like conscription. Conscription is bad. It's also Russia is also conscripting people.
Yeah. Bobby Western, Ukraine isn't allowed to fight back against a nation attempting to annex their sovereign land and eradicate their culture.
Look, and we have to be realistic about what it means when, say, Hillary Clinton offers our sort of help and what kind of help that America can offer. And my reservation has always been about that and not the right to defend against an incursion by a neighboring country. And my concern is that, it just becomes a giant place to sell military contracts and grind people up. So that's my concern. That's why, I've always been that the West needs to be pushing for peace and negotiations. And that said, I also think Russia shouldn't have started a war about it.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.